State management is a hot topic in the Flutter community. You have the default StatefulWidget, and then there are literally hundreds of different libraries to choose from. This video will cut through the noise and once and for all explain the principles which are valid across many state management solutions. You're also going to see examples of some of the most popular patterns and libraries. Hello, welcome to Code, where you are getting prepared for real app development so that you will get freelance clients or a job and be confident about the apps you build. So subscribe and hit the bell to join us on our quest for becoming in-demand Flutter developers. As you could have already heard, there are so many options to choose from, right? That's great! You have StatefulWidget, ChangeNotifier with provider Bloc, MobX, Redux, Fish Redux from Alibaba. Then you have Async Redux, RX Dart View models, States Rebuilder, OSAM, Flutter hooks, Stream Provider, StateNotifier. Wow, that's just too many options to choose from, especially when you are just starting out with Flutter. So how can we cut through this noise and really focus on what's important right here? It turns out that there are just two basic principles to which any of these state management solutions adhere. First, we are going to focus on the mutable and coupled state management solutions, because really there are many ways, but only one principle of dealing with mutable data, mutable state. First of all, let me also tell you that in addition to watching this video where I go through this slides presentation, you can also read a written post on resocoder.com about state management, and you can get there from the link in the video description. Basically, whether you use StatefulWidget, ChangeNotifier, MobX store, or even a reactive model from a States Rebuilder, you couple the fields which hold state. For example, a Boolean field is loading with the class that's responsible for mutating the state. So again, you couple the fields with the class which holds a method for mutating or updating those fields. Also, you usually have just one set of fields per, let's say, a ChangeNotifier. We are going to focus on that state management solutions, but most of the other ones are basically the same with some minor differences, but still the state is mutable and coupled. First up though, there is a public service announcement, and that's because many people, of course myself included in the past, use the term provider and ChangeNotifier sort of interchangeably. All of this stems from the unfortunate wording at Google I/O 2019, where the Google team basically said, manage state with provider. But the truth is that provider just provides anything you want down the widget tree, and it has nothing to do with state management. And if you still don't believe me here, you can also watch the author, Remy Osselet, the author of the provider package himself, explain this once and for all, and the link to that video where he explains everything about provider is in the written tutorial. So again, what are the drawbacks of handling state in a mutable way? Well, state, so the fields and methods for updating them, are inside just one class, for example inside the ChangeNotifier, and you also have only one set of fields per class. You will see what I mean by that in just a little while. And this single set of fields forces you to do crazy hacks for even simple things like showing initial or empty state. You really have to choose between bad and worse options for handling really simple initial state display in your app. Because the question is, will you create a separate isInitial field, something like this, and then you are going to check this isInitial fields or properties value from your UI, and then you are going to show some initial user interface widgets? Or instead of doing that, you are just going to set every field to null And by the way, fields are null by default, so you don't really need to set them explicitly. And then you are going to perform a bunch of null checks in the UI to find out if the state is initial. So on one hand, you have to check one special field everywhere, which is called isInitial. And the other option is to have null checks everywhere. And none of these options is really good. And as if that wasn't enough, the ChangeNotifier or MobX store or whatever is also very bloated. As you can see right here, we are storing fields which hold state together with the methods which are responsible for mutating the state. And also you usually want to prevent outside classes from modifying your state directly, so you need to have private fields and only getters are public. This also adds a bunch of boilerplate. The other benefits we lose out on are the benefits of immutable data. For example, easily achievable undo and redo functionality. Because imagine how you would store the history of state changes if you can update any of the fields independently from each other. You can update isLoading, then you can update result, then whatever. You can do really anything you want, and it would be extremely hard to know about the history of steps of the state changes you have taken throughout time. These drawbacks are the reason why people like to use other state management solutions, even though they may have some drawbacks of their own. So let's fix these drawbacks with immutable state management solutions. The most prominent ones on Flutter are Bloc and Redux. Their basic premise is to separate inputs, logic, and outputs into separate classes or functions in the case of Redux and reducers. As you're going to see in just a bit, this fact mitigates all of the issues which are outlined when we talked about ChangeNotifier or MobX or States Rebuilder. Also, I'm gonna focus on the Bloc library, which is, by the way, not the same as vanilla Bloc pattern. So if you have shivers because you've tried to implement the Bloc pattern yourself from scratch, don't worry, because the Bloc library is much simpler. But even though I'm gonna focus on the Bloc library, similar concepts are applicable to Redux as well. You will just need to translate them to your respective immutable state management solution. Also, it would be great if you understood at least the basics of managing state using the Bloc library, and I have a separate tutorial for that, which you can access from the card in the corner. So how can we go about fixing the issues which stem from mutable state? Well, the first problem we faced with coupled and mutable state management solutions was that representing an initial or an empty state is not easily achievable, because you have to choose between bad and worse, as you remember. But since Bloc or Redux can separate state into multiple separate classes, or freeze unions, if you would rather use freeze for it, which I highly recommend, but just for the sake of simplicity, I'm using just plain old inheritance here. Because of this fact, we can represent our initial or empty state extremely easily. Just look at this. We have one class, initial, and that's it. We do not need to care about setting certain fields to null or creating a new field, which we then have to always check. No, we're going to have an initial state. The UI will receive only one of these states at a point of time. So in other words, the UI will not have to deal with a pile of fields. No, UI will work either with initial or loading or success or error state at a single point of time. So therefore, if the state is success, the only thing which the UI can access is the result entity of some sort. And if the state is initial, the UI can actually not access any fields because the initial state does not hold any fields. all you're gonna do is to check if state is initial or state is success, just regular type check-in, and you are gonna go from there with a smart casted state variable. The second limitation which we faced was bloatedness, and that stems from the fact that a single ChangeNotifier or MobX store or whatever is responsible for holding the state and also performing logic and also mutating the state and having the methods for it. Well, you've already seen how we can separate the states into individual classes, and we can do the same thing with events, which are the inputs. So here we have an event getData. It's a separate class for a block. And in the case of ChangeNotifier, you would need to put this as a method to the ChangeNotifier class. And therefore it would get more bloated, you could say. And of course, the component where the business logic happens, in other words, Bloc, so business logic component, is a separate class as well. And sure, there may be more code in absolute terms, but its complexity is never overwhelming in itself because that code is spread out across classes and usually also across multiple files. As you can see, Bloc is really centered around logic. It just accepts events, outputs states, for example, this loading state, and it doesn't do anything else. All of the fields are specified inside the states. All of the actions which can be taken from the UI are specified inside events. The Bloc cares about events and states only to the point of using those classes, but it does not define them. Therefore, the Bloc code is shorter and more clean than the ChangeNotifier code. So we've seen the events, logic, and just as a refresher, here are again the states which are also inside a separate class. The last pressing limitation was the inability to implement the undo-redo functionality. Well, since the states are emitted only one at a time from this stream, which will emit instances of my state, because of this fact and because of the fact that we have our state classes nicely separated, you do not need to track the individual fields. You just keep record of the myState subclasses which are emitted from the stream. Something like this. Every single block offers the onTransition callback method, which you can override. And then you can keep a simple state history, which will be, for example, a list of my state. You will initialize it with the initial state because that's the first state that's present inside a block. And then onTransition is run whenever the state changes. So for example, if the next state is the loading state, well, this state history will hold initial loading. Then if the next state is success, well, the state history will contain initial, loading, and lastly, success. And it's very easy to replay the state history this way. So you can have undo and redo functionality really in just a matter of few lines of code. And you do not need to keep track of all the different crazy fields as you would need to if you were using some sort of immutable state management solutions, for example, MobX, ChangeNotifier, States Rebuilder, whatever. Of course, state management is all about trade-offs. You can surely see that Bloc introduces quite a lot of boilerplate, but stating this fact without any additional context is not doing this state management library a service. That's like saying that driving a car adds difficulties to your life without stating any of the benefits which driving a car adds to your life. Because sure, you need to shell out money for the car and you need to take care of it and wash it and do all kinds of stuff, but at the same time, it allows you to get where you want much more quickly than if you were to go by foot. The thing is that if you want to go across the street, hopping into a car would be considered quite crazy. But if you are going to a destination which is 200 kilometers or 124.27 miles, a way, you would be weird if you insisted on going by foot. Similarly, if you are building an app which is more for display than for functionality, going with the least boilerplatey option makes sense. But building a complex production-grade app, well, that requires different solutions altogether. So if you are building something simple, using even a stateful widget is good enough. But as you are moving up the ladder toward more production-grade apps, then you should really start looking at some of the more advanced and most possibly immutable state management solutions, such as the Bloc library. So because I'm focusing on Bloc when it comes to immutable state management solutions, let's talk about the benefits of the Bloc library directly. First of all, it provides very good tooling, and compared to other state management solutions that use streams, it's a pure gem. The first benefit is that it's reactive out of the box. That's because Bloc is a subclass of stream. So you know it integrates nicely with just about anything you throw at it without any complications. For example, it's extremely easy to map a Firestore real-time stream of data into a stream of states. And additionally, you can apply all sorts of RxDart operators on the stream of states which are going out of the block, and also on the stream of events which are incoming to the block. For example, you can use the debounce time operator, which is useful for auto search functionality, where you want to start searching for a query only after the user has stopped typing into the text field for a while. Then there is incredibly good tooling for VS Code and IntelliJ or Android Studio. You can implement analytics without any additional work with the help of the Bloc delegate. And I'm just going through these benefits really quickly, but you can also check out the written post from the link in the video description and really just read through them and also through their details at your own pace. Also, if you thought that Dart provided awesome testing support for streams, then you are going to be amazed at how simple testing blocks is, because there is the separate Bloc test package, which makes tests actually fun to write, in my opinion. And then the last point is a completely biased opinion of mine, and that is that the Bloc library has the best documentation ever written. Because if you want to start learning Bloc, you just go to bloclibrary.dev and you can just really understand everything that's going on inside Bloc and how to use Bloc for all kinds of different use cases, because the author of this library, Felix Angelov, has written really extensive documentation so that you are not going to get lost if you decide to use this cool package for state management inside your app. So to sum this slide up, if you want to have benefits of immutable state, you want to closely work with streams, whether for the purpose of testing or integration with other code, for example, Firestore real-time data streams. You want to also observe state changes happening across the app from a single place for easy analytics. And at the same time, you want to keep your code as simple as possible. Then the Bloc library is truly the best available option out there. But also let me tell you here that you do not need to use just one state management package, because while you may use Bloc for managing authentication state, nothing stops you from keeping a dynamically changing color of, for example, a button in a good old StatefulWidget or even a ChangeNotifier. And my rule here is to manage simple state with simple solutions. In global and authentication state and all kinds of state which needs analytics, that requires more complex solutions. But what if you don't need anything that working with streams has to offer, but you still want to keep your state immutable to incur the benefits of immutable state? So is there a crossbreed of Bloc and ChangeNotifier? There is, and it's called StateNotifier. Many people who are using Bloc would probably gladly trade its boilerplate for a leaner code while not losing out on immutability. And at the same time, people who swear by ChangeNotifier, especially after watching this video, they may want to reap the benefits of immutable data, but they are hesitant to switch to Bloc because, frankly, even though it's really cool and I love it, it adds a bunch of boilerplate which may not be necessary for everyone. And this is exactly where the StateNotifier steps in. It inherits the best features of Bloc and ChangeNotifier while compromising really only the stream-specific features like the ability to use RxDart operators. And the StateNotifier package is also authored by Rémi Rosselet, who is the author of the provider package too, so you know they are gonna work together nicely. But by the way, also Bloc uses provider behind the scenes, so it's not like Bloc is out of the provider spectrum. It actually uses provider too. But StateNotifier is made by the same person, so that's a good thing to know. Before we go any further, let me also tell you that an in-depth tutorial on how to use StateNotifier in Flutter is either coming shortly if you are watching this video at the moment when I published it, or it may already be out. So be sure to subscribe to this channel regardless of that, but also if it's already out, you are going to see a card pop up from the corner. Much like with the Bloc, also StateNotifier has only a single way to communicate data back to the UI, and that's the state field, whereas Bloc has a single stream of states. This means that the state classes which we have used for Bloc are just as valid for use with a StateNotifier. So again, here are the same states which we have created for the Bloc package. On the contrary to the Bloc package though, StateNotifier does not have a concept of events. Instead, you create regular methods inside the class of the StateNotifier, just like if you were using a ChangeNotifier. And also, of course, StateNotifier does not use streams. So if you look at this, it's really like a mix between Bloc, because we are using a state here, and ChangeNotifier, because we have the getData method right inside the StateNotifier class, which is responsible for sort of emitting, or in this case only setting, the protected state field to hold a new loading state in this example. Since there are no streams in StateNotifier, there is substantially less boilerplate than if you had used Bloc. And for many people who are on the fence between Bloc and ChangeNotifier, the StateNotifier may be just the right choice. Because really, if you would like to keep your code simple, and that's the only reason which stops you from using the benefits of immutable state, then by all means, StateNotifier is the right choice for you. However, if you'd like to use anything stream specific, which I have outlined before, like for example the RxDart operators or the great testing experience, then I would still stick with Bloc. So the bottom line is, and I know that it's insane that an article about state management has a bottom line, but honestly I do not have just one recommendation, so we are probably going to end up the way that all of the other videos and articles talking about state management in Flutter end up. But in this video we explored mutable and immutable state management solutions for Flutter, and we focused on ChangeNotifier for the mutable part, but all of the other ones are basically the same in their concept. And then we also explored the world of immutable state, mostly through the lens of Bloc and its stream-free alternative, the StateNotifier. But remember that any of the basic concepts are applicable to any sort of a mutable or immutable state management solutions you'd like. So if you like mutating your state and you swear by MobX, that's great, keep using it. If you like Redux, don't be discouraged by people who are bad-mouthing it. ChangeNotifier is also great for plenty of simple apps, and the Bloc library is a great choice if you want to build a robust application. Lastly, StateNotifier is awesome if you want immutability without needing to worry about streams, and you can apply the same reasoning to any sort of a state management package or solution which you like to use. So Yeah, it has ended just like any other state management tutorial out there, but there is one difference. Because we have gone through the basic principles, you can now make an educated choice for your next Flutter app. To go through what you have heard in this video in a written form, check out the written article from the link in the video description. And if you are serious about becoming a great Flutter developer who can build real apps for clients or at a job, go to flutter.education, and the link is also in the video description, to get the top curated Flutter news and resources aimed at improving your app development career. Over there you can also subscribe to my mailing list to get the best Flutter resources delivered weekly right into your inbox. And also, if you don't want to miss more explanation videos and also tutorials, be sure to subscribe to this channel and also join Notification Squad by hitting the bell button to make sure you grow your Flutter skills, because here on ResoCoder, I am determined to provide you with the best tutorials and resources so that you will become an in-demand Flutter developer. If this video helped you with understanding the real core principles of state management in Flutter, and you understand the differences and also benefits of using immutable data, give this video a like and also share it with other developers who are surely going to find it beneficial too. Leave a comment if you have anything to say, and see you in the next video.